it's just very mind-blowing to me. It seems like such a conflict of interest. So here you have our public dollars, which in the past they had never gone to, very little had gone to the charter schools. But each and every year that I've been an activist, I've watched the state legislature push more and more and more of our public funds to these charter schools, to the point where, just in regard to just basic building maintenance, like we are now sharing capital improvement funds with these charter schools, when the whole deal of the charter school industry was that they promised us they could do it better for less. Well, they're not able to do that, and that's clear. And so as a result, more and more funds, these for-profit companies have now invaded our state legislature. They provide very, very large donations to our legislators' campaigns, and so the dollars just keep getting fed in. They have very little oversight in regard to accountability, and our traditional public schools have twice as much. But unfortunately, our state legislature has taken it even a step further and approved just last spring. It started off with House Bill 7069 to provide charter schools with public dollars more so than ever. But the last bill that passed last spring, I want to say it was maybe 7085, I can't remember the exact number, created something called the Family Empowerment Scholarship. This is money for if you would like for your child to attend a religious or a private school, you can receive public tax dollars from the state to allow your child to attend any of these religious and private schools. There is no accountability. These schools don't have to. No, they don't have to. They don't have to take state tests. They don't have nothing. We're basically handing them over our tax dollars. Now, prior to that bill passing, that money, parents used to be able to take it in the form of what was called a tax credit from different companies. So a lot of people say, well, that really wasn't, public tax dollars. That was tax credits coming from companies. Well, it's, tomato, tomato kind of a thing. But that's kind of what kept those tax credit monies coming through. Well, then that money started to dry up because more and more companies were realizing that their money was going to fund schools that were a disaster. The best site that I can tell you to go to for more information is the Orlando Sentinel. They did an amazing, exhaustive, investigative series of articles on voucher schools. And they have video of some of these schools. They've interviewed principals who didn't even have high school degrees. They interviewed, looked in schools where kids sat and did workbooks all day long. There's corporal punishment. There was the textbooks, like you had mentioned. That's more where a lot of those things were coming from. And just last week, the state legislature created something called the Family Empowerment Scholarship. So it's no longer called the tax credit scholarship. It's Family Empowerment. And that money comes directly from traditional public school tax dollars, our money. So like that money that's going to those religious and private schools where there's no accountability is the same dollars that should be being fed into my kids' traditional public schools. And
Let me ask a question here, if I can insert one in here. I don't want to get you off track because I want you to keep talking about this, but the question is, so if I'm understanding this correctly, then a person could claim under the religious exemption thing that their children was any religion they want to make up, okay? They just make one up, okay? And then they send to this school, and this school can engage in all kinds of activity, because I understand, too, I've understood from my research that I've done, that there is almost no accountability. They're not held to the same standards that the public schools are held to, and this money cannot be accounted for often when it goes to the private schools, and that's what's worrisome. We're taking our tax dollars and using it to fund God only knows what, and really, I mean that, Am I correct here?
Yes, definitely. The name of the article, the series that the Orlando Sentinel did was called Schools Without Rules. It came out actually a couple years ago. And that was when there used to be an income cap, too, for if you wanted to accept these dollars, because these dollars were supposed to be meant for low-income families whose children were in failing. So the income cap was approximately $24,000. With this new Family Empowerment Scholarship, the income level is now, you can make up to $65,000 a year and receive these this money for religious and private schools. And eventually, I don't know if it's next year or the year after, it goes up to a cap of $100,000. So basically, I look at this as a handout. So often we hear from our Republican legislators, everybody just wants a handout and everybody wants everything for free. Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is a public handout to families who want to send their kids to religious and private schools.
And it sounds like corporate welfare to me. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. And so, if you take some time to look at the videos that were done by the Schools Without Rules newspaper articles, you can see exactly, get a really, really good idea where your money's going. And the lack of oversight is so alarming. And what a lot of people don't realize is these schools can choose whoever they want. So they can cherry pick. And, even though you have the money doesn't mean you can get into that religious or private school of your choice. And if you have a child with special needs, here in Florida we call it ESE, some other parts of the country call it special ed. It's called exceptional special education here in Florida. And those children, these private schools don't want them. And the religious schools don't necessarily want them. But they will take them, and they are not required to follow the child's IEP. So they may say to a lot of these families, and this happens with a scholarship that's been in Florida for years called the McKay Scholarship. That is a scholarship that any family who has a child with special needs can use. They could take a certain amount of funds based on income, and they could go to a special school for religious or private school. A lot of times what these families find themselves involved in is the school says, I'm going to provide your student with speech 3 times a week or OT, and they're going to have a 1-on-1 aid and all of these wonderful things they promise. And then in the end, the family gets to the school and none of those services end up being realized. And again, there's no accountability. So you have a child who's already behind, already struggling, using our tax dollars and falling even farther behind as they leave the public system. And most often what happens is these children and these families end up coming back to the traditional public schools, back to their neighborhood schools, and all that money's been spent. That McKay money is gone. The school's already checked it out. Typically when they drop these kids, it's usually in February after the second week of the count that the state does to determine how much money should go to each school. So then these kids come back to their neighborhood schools, and we in essence are educating them for free back through the public system, and the private corporation or private or religious school has kept all those dollars. Same thing with charters. That's another thing that charters are really good at doing, is promising parents the world. And as long as that child is there between the second week of October through to the second week of February, all those dollars go to that charter or to that private school or religious school. It's many times, because I saw it myself when I was teaching in Manatee. Every spring, the kids would come on back and, how did it work over there at Imagine or at MSA or any of the numerous, charter or religious or voucher schools. And they would say, it didn't really work out. Yeah.
That's the point, exactly. Listen, we're about to run out of time here. We've got about a minute left, and I need you to summarize. But I'm hoping we may need to have you come back and discuss more, because we have a lot more to discuss in this area. And we'll talk about it and see if we can arrange to get you back, because this is so fascinating. And people need to know this. Bridget, people need to understand this, and why we need to have do everything we can to have some accountability here with these private and charter schools. And our tax dollars. That's our tax dollars. And that money needs to be spent on children and in the public schools getting an education that has some accountability. And in the meantime, before we have you back, I'm hoping to go read that article you told me about here, and hope some of our listeners will too. So listen, you have about 30 seconds here. If you could wrap up here and give your final thoughts, okay?
Sure. I look forward to serving the Manatee County school system, trust, transparency, truth. I'm willing to stand up, push back on the state legislature, and to try to provide especially our ESC students a stronger voice and a protection of their services that they are due per our federal laws.
Thank you so much, Bridget, for being with us today. Okay.
No problem.
And
thank you.
And I want to thank our listeners. We hope you have enjoyed today's discussion. This has been CP, Coastal Progressive and Rainbow Forum on Society Bites Radio, and I have been your host, Steve Ryan.